So welcome back, everybody. This is the third one of these we've done, another trade analysis podcast. And for all of you listening, you may have just heard my heater click on. That's another wonderful background noise we can have. Tyler is back again, the GM of the Jacksonville Hurricanes, and I'm, of course, Ted Schmidt, GM of the California Crusaders, who you're tired of listening to by now. We have 8 trades to go through, and quite a few of these are Tyler's again. He actually made 14 trades this year, which I think is pretty easily the most, although Hawaii's a little bit behind there. So welcome back, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I guess you say I have a little bit of an itchy trigger finger. So we're here to talk about Super Bowl, right? We're talking Super Bowl?
No, because I didn't even watch it, because I don't care at all. I do care. I was asleep this year. That's really what happened. I was tired. And I don't know. I think everybody's probably pretty tired of talking about the Super Bowl right now, so we'll skip that. We're going to bring back kind of the rapid fire round, so these won't be in order. But we are. Oh, and I forgot to put the dates down. Let me see if I can look that up really quick. But we're looking at the trades that were done from. Let's see. Last time we ended, I think, on January 19th. So this will be January 22nd through January 24th is the dates of this trade, and so we'll be skipping. Huntsville, Hawaii to start with, and then the first, coming back to that later, the first one we're going to talk about, I think Tyler's actually going to take the lead on, and that's a trade he made on January 22nd with Hawaii, so that's Jacksonville and Hawaii.
Yeah, so the Jacksonville-Hawaii trade, it's got Ricardo Valera coming from Hawaii to Jacksonville, and a minor league reliever, Tony Alomar, going from Jacksonville to Hawaii. Valera was somebody that had been put on waivers by Las Vegas earlier in the season. Hawaii had gotten him and threw him into the rotation kind of on a lark, hoping to get his trade value up. And, hey, it worked because he got got value out of him from me. Really, I think it's not that I really gave up much. Alomar is pretty much a AAA reliever unless he gets some bumps. He's got 7 stuff and 6 movement control, and really only 2 pitches. So he is a lefty, but he doesn't really look like he'll probably turn into much unless he gets some good bumps. Where Valera probably isn't a starting pitcher. I threw him into the rotation, and he was terrible. But he could be possibly like a setup, middle reliever type pitcher. If he is, he'll be expensive, but if he's able to make the rotation, I think he'll turn into a decent value. Hawaii wasn't going to be keeping him. He wasn't going to sign there, and that's why I made the trade. I was hoping I could get him to extend at a decent contract, and he did. So, I think it was a good move for Hawaii, somebody that they weren't going to be keeping, somebody they got for free. They turn into a prospect and a shot in the dark. And for Hawaii or for Jacksonville, we get somebody that could hopefully make a push down the stretch. He ended up not doing too well, but he looks like a decent pitcher. You just got to figure out what that role is. Not great, but and probably too expensive for what he's going to produce. I would say for Hawaii, you're talking like C+ organizational, because they did get something basically for nothing. And really, for talent-wise, it's probably a C. They do lose some talent, and they don't get a whole lot back. And that would kind of flip it for Jacksonville, probably like a C+ for talent, because we get somebody that can pitch, and a C for organizational because we do get a little bit older, and Valera could flop. So.
I think you're a little harsh on the organizational girls. I actually gave, and maybe I'm a little over here, but I gave both of you guys an A- because, again, Hawaii, I thought this was a great something for nothing. They got something for essentially nothing, and that's not too bad. And maybe A- is a little high. I mean, we can average ours and come in there somewhere in the B range. And then in your case, I think you're looking at this through too much of your own retrospective experience. Valera had never started, and he pitched well as a starter for Hawaii. So even though you had a small sample size, the idea that you thought he could come in and be a starter, I think you're kind of looking at it now that he failed that a little bit for you. But I think you're beating yourself up a little bit too much there. I think that was worth a good shot. And you didn't give up much in Alomar. Alomar I'm maybe a little higher on than you are, only because he's a lefty, and some of those 6-motion lefties work. So if he's an 8-6-6 out of the bullpen, maybe he could be a middle reliever. But again, you're right, it's a bit of a stretch. So,
well, yeah, I'm sorry to step on you there. He does have a positive split against lefties in his stuff. So if he does turn into 8-6-6, he could be a loogie, a guy that pitches,
right.
30 games in 15 innings in a season, and you can get some outs out of him. So he could turn into something, which is obviously why Hawaii wanted to get him, wanted to get something that was potentially valuable. But
right.
He was kind of a throw-in a deal for me in the off season. Wasn't really somebody that I was super high on, and yeah, I see what you're saying. I was looking, at Valera's FIP as a starter for Hawaii. It was 3.8, so I was kind of hoping to get somewhere in that range as far as ERA and FIP went, and it didn't turn out that well. But obviously he wasn't going to throw a 2 ERA going forward. But
right, but he was considerably worse for you, and I don't think you should have expected that. But again, I think we agree mostly on stuff there. We're just kind of off on what we're calling grades. But and I honestly, I was really friendly in the last edition. Usually, I don't give out too many A's, and I don't know if I thought maybe I was being too harsh in the past. But there were a lot of good trades last time, so we'll see how that is going forward. Maybe I'm just getting nicer in my old age. Well, we're going to skip California Jacksonville and come back to that later. And the next one we're going to talk about is Vegas and Birmingham, and this is the deal in which Vegas acquired Gaucho and sent Rob McNeil and Salvador Barron to Birmingham. And so Gaucho I'm pretty familiar with. He actually came up through my organization, and he's now a 32-year-old left-handed pitcher with 7.69 ratings. He throws fastball, sinker, cutter, change. The fastball is really his only plus pitch at this point, and the change is actually kind of weak. He used to have a positive split against lefties, if I remember, but he doesn't anymore. And he's not the pitcher he was in his mid-20s, sort of, which is kind of weird, and we'll get into that. He's lost some stuff, which is a little worrisome, given that he hasn't lost velocity, and you kind of wonder always what's going on there when that happens, or is he going to lose velocity soon? And the reason I say he's not the pitcher he used to be, so from 2022 through 2025, he put up ERAs of 3.19, 3.53, 2.97, 2.75, or is that a 3.75? Either way. But he did that, which sounds great, but he did that with a league average FIP and FIP minus. So it's kind of, you wonder if that's a little bit of a mirage from playing in my park. He is in the second half of the 6-year deal I gave him after 2027, where he got $6.5 million times 4 years, and he has, or 6 years actually, the last 2 are options, and he has 3 of those years remaining at this point. The thing about him is that I got frustrated with him because he kept losing games, despite, and if I remember correctly, he'd give up no runs in 8 innings and then give up 6 runs in 8 innings, and he was just unreliable. In 2027, I traded him for David Bruno, catcher David Bruno, just as a little bit of a background piece. Maybe I'm being a little harsh on him, because honestly, if he can keep up those low 4 ERAs, as we talked in the last one, that's got value. It's a back-end starter. It's $6 million. That's not horrible for a back-end starter, and if you can hit, which Vegas can, a low 4 ERA is going to be good enough to win games. Birmingham in return, and Tyler, you can jump in if you don't have to wait for me. You can just interrupt me if you've got something you're thinking about while we're talking. But Birmingham got Rob McNeil as the third baseman. He's a 21-year-old right-handed batter with 7 contacts, 6 gap, 3 power, 5 eye, 9 avoid K, 10 speed, 10 steal. So really, that's his skill set. He's going to have to slap hit, and he's going to have to run. And if that contact is closer to 8, maybe he could be a decent player down the road. His glove is kind of okay at third. He'll be able to play there. He's not going to be a negative defender, but he's not going to be great. And I think they're looking for a replacement for Diego Moreno, who's getting older. The other player they got is starting pitcher Salvador Barron. He's a 36-year-old left-handed pitcher with a 6.78 rating, sinker, curve, change, slider. Yeah, fork. He doesn't have a plus pitch out of the bunch. The curveball used to be. He's got an $8 million expiring contract. And this is where this trade gets weird. He was pitching better or similar in Vegas to what Gaucho was pitching in Birmingham, which is, and Vegas is a harder park to pitch in. And I don't know the motivation for this deal for wrecked. That's what I don't really understand here. McNeil's not a great prospect, and maybe Gaucho's a little cheaper, and I don't know if this is a salary thing where Rec had to shed some salary. But it's not that much. It's only $1.5 million. He picked up an older pitcher with years left on his deal that's already had a little bit of decline for somebody that was already pitching equivalently for his organization. I don't know. I don't know if you had any thoughts about this one.
So when I look at it, when the trade first happened, I had the same reaction that you did, where I thought, well, what is Rec doing here? Why is he picking up a guy in his 30s, trading away a guy in his 30s, and giving up a prospect? But when you kind of look at it a little bit closer, Gaucho, yeah, he's under contract for quite some time, but those last 2 years are options. So really, after 2030, Matt's kind of got that option of letting him go or keeping him every single year. So if he does fall apart, you get rid of him for no cost. And if he does hold up, well, now you've got a reasonable third, fourth starter for $6.5 million for the next 3 years. So I think it's kind of a low risk move. He dumps a contract that he probably wasn't going to be keeping anyway, or a player that he wasn't going to keep anyway with a Barron. And I would bet that he's probably not super high on McNeil being a right-handed third baseman without great defense and no power. So, he had been trying him at second base, trying to increase kind of his utility, and probably thinking about bringing him up as a backup. So you're basically trading somebody that you're not going to keep and a potential backup for somebody who could potentially be a part of your rotation for 3 years at a decent price. So that's kind of where it looks to me that he was thinking, thinking that maybe Gaucho can hold up that stuff and that kind of flat lines, and he doesn't doesn't continue to drop. And if he does, then he's not out much by losing McNeil. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I like that. That makes it make a little bit more sense. That just kind of fits a little bit better.
That's somebody that doesn't really like Gaucho. I never was really a big fan of him. I always thought he was helped out a lot by your park and just having pretty good outfield defense behind him and being in such a spacious park. So I'm not a huge fan of Gaucho, but I can see where Matt's coming from as I look at the deal a little bit more closely.
Right, and that makes some more sense now. As far as the overall in this, I think this is a good move for Birmingham. They're kind of in a they had a late season surge, but they're really kind of in a retooling state. And frankly, if I know it's hard to let your big guys go, but if I was Cal Varuso, I would trade both Nelson Ramirez and Juan Jose Ornelas just for the world. I mean, I bet you I don't know what you can get for Nelson Ramirez, but it's got to be a lot. And they're kind of in a, they're kind of that perpetual 80 win stage where you're just never going to go anywhere. Between those two, they should be able to get 4 or maybe even 5 top end prospects. And if they get the right ones, I think it's a good rebuild thing. We're getting a little bit off track here, but still, that's why I think this is a good deal for them. Because Rob McNeil, like I said, he's got a 9 ABK and a 7 contact, and if that's closer to 8 and he's fast, he's never going to be anything better than average. But he could be an average third baseman, maybe, or he could just not hit it all and stink up the joint. Either one of those is possible. As far as grades, I gave Vegas kind of a C+, B- on the talent here, probably more of a C+. Organizationally, I moved him up to a B-. That makes more sense now. Birmingham, for talent, I gave him a B-, and organizational, I gave him an A- because I just think this is the right kind of move for them to make.
I agree. I think it kind of works for both sides. I think Birmingham, it makes a little bit more sense. The nice thing about the trade for them, too, is they got a pitcher in return that could fill Gaucho's spot for this season. So if they did continue to win, they didn't lose out on that production. So Having Salvador for a season really was, I think, a great pickup. Probably Matt was trying to get rid of the salary to make the salaries balance out, but I think it was a win for Birmingham too.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think you were going to take the lead on the next one because we're going to skip Jason Dunn for now and move on to your trade with Indy, where they were finally able to offload. And offload makes it sound bad, but they've been looking to deal Sergio Ramos for a while and finally found a taker with you.
Yeah, the whole season I'd been looking at not buying and really trying to not give away prospects. But in this deal, I send, kind of a quasi-developed AAA, Quad A outfielder in Sexto Castillo. A young center fielder in Marc-Andre Poirier.
I guess maybe, yeah.
Being French, who's a great defender, but really not much of a hitter. And then probably the best part of the deal for Indy is starting pitcher Jose Reyes, who was an international find years ago, and that all goes in exchange for Sergio Ramos, trying to add a little bit of power to our lineup. Now, Castillo's a lefty. He could possibly play center field if you needed him to in case of injury, but really he's a right fielder. He doesn't have the range to play center field full-time, and really doesn't have the bat to play a corner outfield full-time. Doesn't really have the bat to play center field full-time.
Right.
He's 5'5", 156 against righties. He does have a lot of speed. Well, pretty good speed, I guess I shouldn't say a lot. And he's just a terrible clubhouse guy. Very high greed, very low leader, very low work ethic. Not very good in the clubhouse. So he was maxed out. He wasn't going anywhere in my system. The other center fielder, Groove Thing, Poirier.
He's got a great name. At least he's Marc-Andre Poirier, the Groove Thing. It's about the only, it's about the best you can get.
Good thing going for him. But he's another lefty that has really good range, can play all the outfield positions phenomenally, has speed, but again, he can't hit. He's 5'5", 357, so a little bit better than Castillo, but not much. The good thing about him is he's only 21, so they pick him up hoping that he gets a couple of bumps here and there, and maybe he ends up as a 6 contact versus right. A center fielder that's 6'3", 6'7", or somewhere around there isn't terrible. That's somebody you can actually play with for a few years.
But he's still more of a 4th outfielder, like even if that happens.
But, oh yeah, but that's somebody that could be on their roster as they're rebuilding. Right. But the big one for them is Reyes. He's a righty, which is the downside, but he does have a plus curveball and plus stamina, and also has a fastball and changeup. 7.76 talents, and he's 7.74 right now, so he's right on track developmentally at 22. He was tough for me to give up. I didn't really want to give up a pitcher, but I needed a power bat. I needed somebody to play left field because I had nobody playing left field. So that was I think that was a really nice pickup for them. I think Reyes has kind of maybe a 5th starter kind of ceiling. Somebody that might be able to eat some innings. He's not going to be a world beater by any means, but it was tough for me in my position as somebody that was rebuilding to give up. Coming back, Sergio Ramos is a lefty slugger who plays right field, and that's really kind of where he's stuck at. He really would be better probably in left field, but at his age, at 31, it's going to be tough to teach him left field without getting terrible results for a little while. But he does have a 10 power bat and has a 7 contact, which I think is probably a low 7. He's somebody that's going to hit like 260, 270 most of the time, especially because of his high strikeouts and low walks. But he's a great clubhouse guy on top of it. Very high leader, high work ethic. Really was the type of guy that somebody that's contending and making a push to the playoffs wants to pick up. Now, the big downside that I haven't talked about with him is the contract. He's signed for over $10 million for another year. So that's going to be a pretty big hit. I don't think he's probably worth that contract, but he is somebody that can hit 30-plus home runs in a platoon.
Right.
So overall, I think organizationally for Indy, I would call it an A. They pick up 3 guys for somebody that they've been trying to get rid of for a while now that they haven't had takers on. 2 of them probably aren't going to be much of an impact, but that the starting pitcher could end up being somebody that plays for them for a number of years, at least through arbitration, if he has a cheap arbitration amounts. So, and they get rid of somebody that they're not going to be needing. They're rebuilding. They're terrible right now. There's really no reason to continue to have Sergio Ramos on their team if they can get something out of him.
Except for the fan interest lost. I mean, that is the one thing we always kind of overlook in these. But I still agree. I would still move him.
Sure. the thing for them is it was at the end of the season, so it's not going to hurt their attendance, but for a month, and they can sign some scrub, former player. They can go out and get Jason Dunn in the off season and have him play catcher and get that right back. So.
Speaking of catchers, Lewis Stevens is still out there, depending on how much he asks, and everybody still loves him. So yeah, there's these players where it's just it's fine for me that OOTP doesn't fix it because it allows me to monkey the system a little bit, but it is kind of goofy. So.
Well, if you think about it, in real life, a guy like Jeter.
That's
kind
true.
of the comparison, somebody that's
every Yankees fan is
terrible.
Ready to stab you in the face right now. But, yeah.
But there's guys like that all the time. Ken Griffey Jr. at the end of his career, people would come out to watch him play for the White Sox, even though he was just awful.
Right.
But with them talent wise, I would say it's probably a B minus. They really are losing out. They trade a realistic player for kind of some shots in the dark, but that kind of brought it up to a B minus because of the fact that they really don't want to be paying Ramos $12 million next year when they're trying to rebuild. So, and then for Jacksonville, talent wise, I would probably put it as a B minus. Ramos is a good pickup, I think, for us. He fills a need. We didn't have a lot of power. And then we're not giving up a ton, but we do give up a solid arm. And then organizationally, again, probably like a B minus for Jacksonville.
I was right with you on the grades. I was about a half letter grade lower on just across the board, although I organizationally gave you a B. But I pretty much agree with your assessment, everything there. The one thing I'll say about Jose Reyes, just because I think there's something interesting there to talk about with him. Yeah, I think as a starter, his ceiling is maybe a fifth starter, but I wonder, what was he when you switch him to a relief role? Because he's got to be at least 8, 7, 6 as a reliever. Does he get to 9?
I never really switched him to a relief role, being that he was always so low in the minors until this year.
Okay.
I just always had him as a starter, just kind of hoping that he would develop. I would assume he would be an 8.
He's got to be an 8. There's no way he's less than an 8. But I think he's 7 fastball, 9 curveball, 8 change. I mean, that's good enough to play up a little bit with max effort. He could get close to 9. The other question on him is he's got all that stamina, and well, this is just a little bit of an oddity because I play around with making players and doing stuff sometimes, so I don't know how much you've done this or know about this, but and maybe I'm giving away too many trade secrets here and someone else can be mad at me, but curveballs are a great relief conversion pitch. For whatever reason, that 9 curveball is probably on the internal 0 to 200 scale or whatever. I think it goes higher than that, but then you get to the pitches rated 13 and stuff. But on the 0 to 200 scale, a 9 curveball is probably 140 or 150 or 160 or something ridiculous in there. Whereas a 9 fastball, depending on the velocity, can only be sometimes it's only 100. Same thing the change. That pitch is probably an 8 change is probably only rated somewhere in the 120, 130 range. So curveballs for the same number tend to have a lot higher actual number of points on the internal scale. And so if we're doing this math system where we take, the extra pitches, add them up, divide by 3 twice, you get more out of a curveball than you do out of some of these other pitches. I think cutters and splitters are some of the ones you get the very least out of. The reason to bring that up is I think the way the Constitution's worded is that you keep the 2 highest rated pitches in the fastball.
I gotta go here for a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries. I'll just talk to nobody. But the reason I bring that up is the way I've lost my train of thought. The way the Constitution is worded, you keep a fastball and the next highest rated pitch. But I've seen people try to pick the pitches in the past, and if we're allowing that, he could RP convert to a 9.76 reliever, which is pretty solid, unless he does that already anyway. It's just kind of an interesting thought. I think what we'll do since Tyler's away for a second is I'll go through some of these rapid fire trades until he gets back, because they're just really not that interesting. And we can go through them pretty quickly. The first one is Huntsville and Hawaii. So we're going kind of back to the beginning of this section if you're looking on the completed trades for them. And then in this one, Huntsville gets Emery Sharp again. They had him the year before, but didn't sign him at free agency. And they send Paco Andrade to Hawaii. Emery Sharp's a 38-year-old right-handed batter. Most of us are probably pretty familiar with him right now. He's still a great defender in left. And he's 6'7", 8, 6'5", and he's never. It's got to be a low 6. He's basically not been a great hitter for about 5-6 seasons now. But he did do fairly well in a limited time last year for Huntsville, and I'm sure that was a factor. And they needed to get Mauro Ibanez's bat out against left-handed pitching. Like, they just couldn't afford to have him there anymore. And I'm sure that was the motivation for this. Hawaii got Paco Andrade, who's a 22-year-old right-handed bat who can't hit. And he's, double A filler, probably. Defensively, he's kind of a utility knife, so he does have some organizational value to just pick up a roster spot and to defend your position so we don't have someone else. This kind of trade, this is a very minor move. Grades, you're back. Okay. Grades for this, Huntsville, maybe you're back. You back?
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah,
okay.
Sorry.
I heard clicks. Huntsville, I gave him for a team. I gave him a C-. Organizationally, C+. Hawaii team, why did I say team? Talent, I gave him a D. And then this is not applicable for organizational because it just doesn't really matter for them at all. While you're gone, I just knocked out one of the rapid ones, talked about Huntsville, Hawaii really quickly, but we can move on back to some more interesting stuff. Everything okay over there?
Yeah, so my wife just got home, and when my wife came home, it woke up my daughter, and she came up to the top of the stairs, so I ran up there to get her tucked back in bed.
Oh, well, see, this is why you're a better man than I am. I'm probably not allowed to ever have children for these kind of reasons. Let's move on. You're going to talk about, I think the next one we have
Vogel?
on the list. Yeah, is Vogel. Who?
Yeah, so moving along, I was picking up a lot of contracts, and Brian Vogel was terrible for us in that experiment. And I had been talking with Kevin all throughout the season, and he'd kind of been interested in getting him back, and I was kind of wanting to trade him, but not really. But then with getting all those contracts, he became a piece that I wanted to move. So I unloaded Brian Vogel, strikeout king, for William Ryu, who's a glove-first prospect in Calgary's system. Vogel, I picked him up wanting him to take over at second base, and immediately after I picked him up, he dropped in range and then got hurt. And then when he finally did come back, was just awful. He had a 5 OPS plus. That's 005 OPS plus for us. So he was not getting along too well in Jacksonville, and he was not going to be starting anymore. And I really didn't want to continue to make him ride the bench because I thought he could be useful, and I knew that Kevin really liked him and would use him, and I wasn't going to use him. So I kind of gave him up for somebody that's, a long shot prospect, somebody that probably won't really play, but he does have kind of a path to the majors. He's 5'5", 367 in his talents, and he is 10 range and 9 air infielder. So he could be a shortstop. He could end up being just a utility player if the bat develops enough, but really it was just trying to get some sort of value, and really the main focus of the trade was getting rid of the contract, a small contract, and letting Vogel play. I just didn't want to see a guy that I liked ride the bench. I didn't really want to do that. So
no, and it's a nice little move. Everybody's already bored with this. Anybody that doesn't like Brian Vogel's already kind of done with this deal. But I just love Vogel, and I want to make. There is no case for him to be in the Hall of Fame. I want to make one because how many 400 home run second basemen are there? And for most of his career, he was a great defender too. And you can't put a guy with a 237 batting average and 267 on base percentage in the Hall. You just can't do it. But I want to because I love Brian Vogel and I want him to stick around long enough to get to the strikeout record. He probably can't. He's third now. I think he has to have like 2 or 3 more years to make it though. Which is amazing that someone has struck out that many more times than Brian Vogel, who's been playing since he was 20, and striking out nearly 200 times every year. So,
yeah, I think the amazing thing really is he's been striking out almost 200 times a year since he was 21, and he still hasn't broken the record.
Right? Yeah,
it's an amazing record.
It's crazy. And And the other thing about Brian Vogel, and I realize OOTP and injuries is a ridiculous thing, but Brian Vogel has MS. Like, and I know that doesn't matter, but like he's had multiple sclerosis. He got like one of those weird random like team things, and this is back when he was still a productive player, and he'd just been signed to a contract, and someone was like, "Crap, I'm out like millions of dollars," and it never mattered to him. I think he missed like 3 months, and whatever disease-modifying drug he is on is doing a good job, or the game forgot that they told us that he had MS.
When was it? Was that like 2025?
Yeah, it was a while ago. Like he's played with it for like 7 or 8 years now. Which,
okay, so it's even longer than that.
Right. He's a triumph over a terrible disease in video game fashion, whatever that means. So
I mean, yeah, for grades, I don't really know. I mean, it's probably B minus, B. You know, I didn't really give up much in Vogel because he was terrible for us. I didn't really get much back. It's not much of a deal in the grand scheme of things, but it's interesting to us because we both like Vogel.
I didn't even give you an organizational grade. I gave you not applicable. Then I gave you a D minus for talent. Calgary I gave a C because I like Vogel. It probably should be a C minus or a D plus. Then I gave him a B minus because I like Vogel, and they were like, this guy can hit for us. And you know what? He went back there. I know this shouldn't count, but I love Vogel, and he went back there and hit for him. He had a 1.1 OPS for him. He, if you add his OPS plus with Calgary to yours, he's almost at 200.
He split time almost evenly between us, and he had almost a 100 OPS plus, and he had a 5 with us. Yeah, as bad as he was for us, he was that good for Calgary. So the funny thing about Vogel to me is my owner tasked me with signing somebody from Jacksonville, signing a hometown player, and me picking up Vogel was the closest thing to it, and Vogel is from Greenville, South Carolina, which is where Jacksonville
used to
from.
Be. Nice.
So the owner's like, cool. "Oh, hey, you got a hometown player. Awesome. That's good enough for me."
Oh, that counted?
It was like a orange or yellow, like it kind of counted.
Well, I didn't know.
My owner was mad when I traded him away.
I didn't know there was a gray area on that, so that's kind of neat. I thought it was like an all or nothing, so I learned something today. Good. So we have one more big deal to talk about, and then a few small ones to go through. And you were gonna. Oh wait, I think I was gonna talk about this first, and you're gonna kind of give counterpoint. So this is the Taunch deal, which you picked him up, so you have some things to say. And then I was the one that brought him up to the majors, although I didn't draft him. I think he was an international signing, I believe. He's Venezuelan, I think. Colombian, maybe? I don't know. Venezuelan. Yeah. But he was international signing with Louisville a long time ago. And then when I got into the league in 2021, my team was terrible. This is a little backstory for the people that are new. And my team was awful. I think I was like $40 million in the red already. And I had a $120 million payroll. And I had like a 60-win team. And I had one of the best starters in the league at the time, Gabriel Campos. And so Taunch was primarily what I got back for him. And when I got him, he was like 8.76, and then he just bumped just like crazy, just continually. And the genius was grinding his hands in rage while this was going on. And he set the world on fire when he came up. I mean, like in his second year, he won in Nebraska, I think, in like 2024, outdueling Ricardo Diaz, who was at the top of his game at that point. It was this, I've got this great 1-2 punch for years. And then he kind of just was always good but not great after that for me. So I sent him to Vegas for Workman. And I was happy, honestly, to let him go. Like I was frustrated at that point. I wonder how much that 4 stamina is hurting him, although it did get to 5, so I think it's a higher 4. But I got tired of wondering, like, what happened to the good... there's a burp. Sorry. What happened to the good Jesus Taunch? And there's nothing wrong. He hasn't lumped anything. He still has ridiculous stuff. He's kind of hard. He's a little bit of an enigma for me. And so... Was he the one thing I wasn't sure, because you signed him to an extension? Did he have any arbitration left?
Actually, Matt had signed him to an extension earlier in the year. That was the big reason why he wanted to get rid of him.
Okay, and you were okay with that, and it's not a bad extension. I mean, he's a 10-7-8 with no split right-handed starter. He should be at the very least a 1A, and for $13 million, that's absolutely fine. for his extension. And I honestly think we're probably all just looking at his ERAs too much and ignoring.
No, his FIP's not great either.
No, it's not. It's been kind of. You're right. It's been kind of in the 3 to 4, high 3s 4, and his FIP minus is only. That was the thing with me. When he comes up, he has a FIP minus of 69, and then 82, 82. I'm okay with those. But then in the 90s, and he's been there for a while, and you just wonder what the heck is going on with this guy. I wonder if you could do something in the offseason with some of his personality stuff. I don't know if that would make a difference. Like he's wavered. Like now it's saying he's selfish again. I put I think 100 points in him to fix that previously. And I think his greed has actually come back up again. I don't know if there's a personality issue with him, but he should be good. He should be a good player. On paper, he's a good player. And I don't think he sent away way too much for him. So Vegas got Dieter Hardinger, who's 39 and still productive, which is crazy. He's 6'8", 9, fastball, sinker, I think it's a curveball change. A little bit of a minus split versus left. And he's been, for a few years now, he's been a league average starter. He's, which again, has some value and has some use. He is signed next year, and that's a little scary for $5.3 million because he's 39. You don't know if that's just going to be wasted money. There's no way that Vegas probably picks up his $8 million option the year after that. But, he's a starter you can kind of shoehorn into a rotation. Gonzalo Fajardo, that you sent over, the 22-year-old lefty, he's 6'7", 8". He's got a fastball change cutter. The only one of those pitches that's really impressive is a change, which is rated a 9. He doesn't have a split. He looks like he could be a back-end starter, like a number 5, just on the basis of the fact that he's lefty, with a good change. Just be a junk baller, and he does at 22. He's got a lot of control left to get to that 8. He's only 5'8". And if that lumps at all, say he ends up like 6'7", you really wonder if he should even be starting. And he doesn't. He has one pitch. He has a change, so he's not like somebody you can put in a relief role and hope his fastball plays up. It's not going to. You also sent Kent Ward, who's a 24-year-old, I think left-handed pitcher. Man, you just emptied your minors of lefty pitchers in this deal. He's nothing special though. He's 7'6", He's got a slight positive lefty split due to his curveball. And like we were saying earlier, some of those 6-motion lefties work, but he doesn't have the stuff. So I don't think you gave up much in him. He's kind of a prayer, really. And then, man, you have 2 more players. You sent away a lot of players.
The link is wrong. It's Fernando Castillo is the Castillo that goes.
I figured that out because it didn't make sense. But Fernando Castillo is actually a decent looking prospect. He's a 23-year-old lefty. 7'7", 8". He has to be a reliever. He doesn't have the stamina to be a starter. Fastball slider plus changeup plus lefty split. He's near developed. He kind of looks like a middle reliever. That not a. He probably. I mean, he's close enough to develop that I think that's what he is. Maybe a loogie if the middle relief role doesn't work out. Vicente Ventura, who you sent over, is probably the best of the bunch. So he's a 19-year-old lefty reliever also. Fastball slider. He has more stamina and he has a changeup that sucks. So I don't know if Rex on I'm going to acquire everybody with 1 to 2 changeups in hopes they bump because we've seen it happen so many times. I've thought about it. Maybe these players are worth more. Great fastball, good slider. Somehow doesn't have a split with a fastball slider combo, which is a little weird.
I think that'll go up as the slider improves.
Yeah, and that's what I wonder about. But he's really well developed at 19 years old. And he kind of looks like maybe a kind of a weak setup guy, unless because he's lefty he plays well and really is a setup guy. So my thoughts in this deal are in terms of the moving parts. I think this is fair. If Taunch plays as what he should be, you gave up a replacement starter. You just swapped a replacement starter and Hardinger back, and then you gave up in Fajardo kind of a weak middle reliever looking prospect, in Castillo a middle relief prospect, and in Ventura a setup type prospect. So that's kind of 3 not great but usable pitchers for Taunch, which is, and I don't think Ward really matters much. And that's a fair deal. As far as For Vegas, I think they had the same thing. They were like looking at Taunch as I did, and they've got a hitter park, so maybe and Taunch has struggles with the home run at times, so maybe they were just kind of they didn't want to seem to commit to him, and that's the problem I had with him too. For talent, I gave Las Vegas a B- in what they got back. That's a solid prospect haul. None of them are great, but they're usable parts. Organizationally, I gave them an A-. For talent, I gave you a kind of a B+. It could be an A- if Taunch does what he's supposed to. Organizationally, same thing. B+ because it's a little risk on Taunch. You gave up a lot of stuff. A- if he works out, if it's a fair trade. So I don't know. I wish you luck with Taunch. I don't know what his deal is.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the deals hinges obviously on Taunch, but then on Fajardo and Ventura. If Fajardo does develop that control and becomes a number 5 starter, and Ventura, the thing about Ventura is he's been bumping too. I picked him up last year at 7.77 and quite a bit lower overall, and he's developed a lot both overall and in his potential. So Matt's probably picking him up thinking, well, if I can get just a little bit more, if he continues to bump, now that guy suddenly looks like a potential top setup man. So, and then obviously if you get that lucky changeup that just happens, all of a sudden the guy's a number 1 starter. But
right,
to me, it's not really that confusing with Taunch. I mean, I picked him up not expecting him to be a number 1. He's a number 1 for me right now because my pitching's terrible. But overall, I don't think he's a number 1. I think probably what happened was he was probably over 10 stuff early on in his career, and that has probably fallen down to 10. He was probably like 11 or so. Look at his early seasons. He's 233 strikeouts in 207 innings, 229 and 198. And now you look at the last two, 196 and 196, and then 195 and 175. So I think that stuff has fallen, and he's left a cushy pitcher's park and gone to hitter's park, where he's given up more hits. Those hits are turning into home runs because he's in a hitter's park. So that's kind of that's the reason that I didn't want to give up another starting pitcher for him. When I reached out to Matt, I said I didn't want to trade any of my top starting pitchers, and he kind of threw this back to me, and it seemed like a fair deal to me. I just traded 4 lefty relievers that could turn into something for him, and Taunch is still a pretty big question mark. He's not really a number 1 pitcher with that stamina and with his results of late, so if he can be a number 2, a usable number 1 for me, then it turns out into a really good deal for me. If he continues to post 4.5, 4.0 FIPS, it turns into a good deal for Las Vegas, which is kind of
and that's the weird thing.
Win-win for both teams to me.
Even if his stuff used to be, and you're probably right with that, if his stuff used to be like 11 or so, and now it's down to 10 or barely 10 or something along those lines, and he's still striking out a batter an inning, and he's not walking guys, and his home run rate isn't horrible. I mean, that's part of the biggest problem, but he shouldn't be a 4.5 FIP guy. He just shouldn't. Even if he's not great, he should be 3.75, 3.8, something like that, which is actually kind of what he did for you. It's just kind of confusing to me how I have a hard time figuring out how a guy with 10.78 ratings could even be a 4 FIP. That just doesn't. But we've seen it a few times in the league, so it's not impossible. It's just kind of obnoxious, really, more than anything. So yeah, I think we've got a couple to get through quickly. I covered Huntsville, Hawaii that we skipped earlier. I think the next one to look at that's kind of rapid is a trade you and I made. You sent me Miguel. I needed a first baseman. I tried to play Roberto Duran after he had a great year last year, and he was just terrible. And I stuck with him way too long, and I could have had multiple other players that got moved, and that's just a fail on my part. But you had Miguel Carrasco sitting around, who really hasn't been good since about 2024. He's kind of lumped his power since then, and his contact is still a 6, but it might have been a high 6 at some point. He doesn't really have much of a positive lefty split anymore. He's an okay defender at first. He was having a great year for you. And he was hitting like 333, 395, 623 if I'm reading my writing right.
Yep.
And I was making $500K, and you were looking to move him, and you had no place to play him. You got Rutledge at first and Hahn as your DH, so he's just riding the pine. And so I figured, what the heck, this has got it worked out for me actually nicely, but except for that part where he got hurt. And you picked up Pablo Marquez, who's a 21-year-old left-handed batter, kind of first base, probably more of a DH. He really can't play first base. And he's kind of a weak lottery ticket. He's 5'7", 6'4", 8 speed, which is nice for kind of a little bit more of a thumper type bat if he ends up being a DH. And if he bumps, he can play DH for you. Although you got Hahn, so I don't know that he will. But I don't know. He's kind of just a fun guy to have in the organization. Really, you don't get much out of him. I'm going to skip the grades on these smaller ones. They're done, but I don't think they need a lot of talking about because they're really not that interesting. I don't know if you had any thoughts about this one.
The interesting thing about Carrasco is just the fact that he played so well this year. He has been basically nothing, like you said, since 2024. 2023 really. So he's been not good at all for 6+ years, and then all of a sudden he comes back on the scene and hits 350, 409, 640 over 100 at bats. It's just kind of like, what?
Where did that come from, right? And then you wonder if the other year's bad luck, and this is the closer to the. I mean, obviously he can't sustain this. I wanted to extend him. I was like, that's good enough that if he doesn't want much, I'll just give him money and hope that he doesn't suck next year. But he wanted $2.4 million for 3 years, and that's not going to happen.
He'll be on the open market for a long time. That's kind of, I picked him up at the end of, what was it? The end of 2026, right at the end of the season on a minor league deal. Got him to extend on a minor league deal, so he was in my system for a year or two, and actually he did the same thing to me. He wanted $2 million to extend, so I let him go, and then he was still sitting there in the middle of the season, and I picked him up on another minor league deal. He's a nice guy to have in AAA. He's a guy that you can call up
right
in case of emergency and get a couple of at-bats out of him. That's the reason that he came up. Rutledge got hurt. I had nobody else to play. I called him up while I was signing Cabrero. I can't remember the big lefty power bat that was out there at the time. Yeah. But anyway, and he did well. And so that's, it's kind of like, well, I'll try to get something out of him for, let him continue to play. So, he's just a nice guy to have. So I figure somebody will pick him up, let him kick around in AAA, and he might get a few at-bats here and there, but he's not somebody you really go into a season wanting to start.
Right. And the last kind of these rapid deals is the Jason Dunn deal. I think most of us know who Jason Dunn is. He's 39 now, and he is easily. I really wish I could find a way to look at the stats before 1995. But I really doubt there's a catcher with more innings behind the plate than Jason Dunn. He's been doing it forever. And he's still 7.77, 6'4" against right-handed pitching, which is better than league average. And he wasn't playing very well in the Twin Cities, but you see this all the time. This is kind of another little minor thing to talk about. These guys that are on bad teams, don't give up on them. A lot of them, you just put them in a better park and a better atmosphere, and they fix it a little bit. And you've seen that with a lot of guys coming out of Havana, where Havana was just a crap hole for a while. And look at what Chandler's doing now. You're looking at Chandler going, what's wrong with this guy? Why is he pitching so poorly? You put him on a winning club in Louisville, and he nearly wins in Nebraska. So, anyway, getting back to this, you basically just gave the Twin Cities some money and picked up Jason Dunn because you needed a left-handed half of your catcher platoon, and it worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, that was before I had given up prospects for Tonch and Ramos, so I was still trying to not give up any prospects, but also fill the lefty spot with Jake Blues, really just kind of falling apart for me. And Robertson having a terrible season too. So it's kind of like just pay a little bit of money to get a guy that's has the history of being a good hitter and hope that he kind of figures it out with a team that's winning. Morale seems to really have a pretty big effect in the last couple of versions of OOTP, and it's just, he was probably angry and not you're really having a good time there in the Twin Cities, and he comes to a team that's in the playoff race, and his attitude turns around, and then suddenly his production kind of turns around too. So, that was the thing, and he comes in and wins the Gregorian round MVP. So it was a big deal. I would like to extend him. I just don't know if I can really justify paying that kind of a money to a 40-year-old catcher. But
right. I don't think. I mean, even if you're interested in him, you can probably get him off the free agent scrap heap for less than what he's asking if you want him. So
yeah. I really hope, even if he doesn't sign with us, that he gets picked up by somebody, because he can still play. And I don't know. I'm one of those guys that I want to see prospects come up as soon as they're ready to play, and I hope that guys hang on if they're still capable of playing. It's kind of neat to see those kind of stats and the history and stuff like that. So I hope he latches on somewhere and gets 2,500 and has another good season, because I think he still has one more in him.
He might. The only thing that I would make me wonder if he does is that I know catcher defense doesn't really seem to matter, and people are going to rip me apart for the Saunders trade later, but he is just really bad. Like, really, really bad. Bad enough that I think that argument that it doesn't matter has to be thrown out. He's probably costing you some runs.
But if you actually look at the stats, in 2028, 2029, he had 0 passed balls and was a he's a plus 3.0 defender.
Yeah, but
CR defender, and he threw out 30% of the runners. So I mean.
But again, the numbers for catchers are kind of squirrely to start with anyway. Like, what do they really mean? But you're probably right. And you're probably right. I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up on catcher defense, even though I've been proven over and over that I'm wrong about OTP. Implementation
of it. That's on the opposite end of it. It's nice, like, if you can get a guy that has good defense. That's why I played Robertson. He's got a good arm. So I wanted Robertson to be my guy. Dunn's not a guy that I would want to go into a season starting, but I did it before. Gosh, I can't even think of the kid's name. I got the guy in the Rule 5 draft in 2026, and he went and won a Gilstrom Award, and he had like 2 or 3 catcher defense and was just terrible. He had like 12 pass balls on the season, but he was still like a 3.5 WAR player.
I'm just going to be wrong. I'll just deal with the fact that I'm wrong and keep liking my catcher defense. So that's all the trades we'd planned. There's 8 of them to get through. You and I had talked about doing one more. We're about a little over 50 minutes now, which is usually about how long these run. I'm up for tackling that one we were talking about if you feel like it. We don't have to, because we're getting a little long here. So if you need to get going.
Let's go ahead and do it. We can get that one out of the way and make it an even hour.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to go backwards a little bit to, if you're looking, this happened on, it's on page 2 of the recent completed trades. It's back on December 10th, happened just before the season started, and this is Vegas and Long Beach. And this is the deal that sent Coop Estes back to his home in Vegas. So Long Beach, which they probably regretted at one point during the season, thought they were going to have a surplus of starting pitchers, and so they'd signed Gary Estes to kind of a longer-ish deal that would take him through 2033, and he's 35 years old, and I'm sure those were the kind of motivating factors in wanting to get out of this. And Recht is human. He's like all of us. Gary Estes has been just Mr. Las Vegas hustler forever. I think for the first half of his career, he actually wasn't the marquee starter there, but everybody else flamed out, and he just kept on chugging and just kept putting up great year after great year after great year. And so Recht needed a little more starting pitching and went to get his big guy back.
Yeah, he was the second fiddle to Mike Swanson, right?
Right, but Swanson had come over from Buffalo. The guy I'm thinking of, Manny Bautista, I would actually have called him number one. Yeah. And then there was somebody else that I'm not remembering that was there too. Because I remember looking at that stat back when I came into the league, and ratings wise, Estes was like the number 3 on the staff, which was crazy. It's just Recht's damn teams are just frustrating. Again, as I've said before, I'm glad I still don't have to play them despite realignment. But for that, Long Beach got a few players. They got a relief pitcher in Jose Feliz. They got a DH, really. Who knows where the hell this guy's going to play in Antonio Valentin. And then they got a pitching prospect in Julio Velasco. So my thoughts on Feliz are essentially that, he's 25. He'd been, he'd established a decent track record. Well, no, he hasn't, actually. I'm sorry. He had almost no innings pitched in Vegas. The ERAs and FIPS look good, but he pitched maybe 40 innings over the previous 3 years there. But he's got the stuff. He's a lefty. He's got a fastball curveball combo, and he does have a split with that against lefties. But he's still 8.76 against righties, 9.77 against lefties, and he's got a possible 4 changeup. And 6 stamina, so you could make the argument that you could swing him as a 5th starter if you really wanted to, although that's probably a little bit of a stretch. He's team controlled, he's ARB eligible. He's just a nice little organizational piece to have. He's not gonna be great for you probably, but he's a reliable reliever. Antonio Valentin, these OTP nicknames are awesome. First, they're just arbitrarily assigned, and who was ever named Wormtail? I don't even know what that means or comes from. It just sounds horrible.
And out of Venezuela too.
Right, yeah, that makes no sense. He can't play in the field at all, anywhere. So he's a slap-hitting speedster DH who doesn't take a walk, which is why Vegas never found a place for him. He's got, 9 contact potential. He's got gap power with top-end speed. He doesn't strike out, but he has no real power, and he doesn't take walks. And you just wonder how the heck you're going to fit that guy into a lineup. I don't know where.
Yeah, I get hung up on it too. You want your DH to be a power hitter. I guess if the guy ends up being Holden Blackwell light and can hit 300 plus and gets doubles, he does have good gap power, so he should get doubles. He, maybe can be somebody that's a 750 plus OPS player. But it's tough to have a high enough OPS to be a top DH without any power.
Right. And that's kind of, I think he's going to struggle to find a place to play for most of his career. You see a couple of these guys that can play some first base, like Phil Chapman and then Love Machine Leonard in Calgary. Both of them have a little bit more power, but they basically said,
Dusty Rhodes, but he's got more power too.
Right, but they basically punted pitching. The teams are punted power. They were just like, you know what, screw it. He's a good player. Let's play him at first, and that's not unreasonable. But Valentin can't even play first, so that's a little tough figuring out where he's going to play. Probably the reason Long Beach makes this deal is the pitcher they picked up, Julio Velasco, who's a 22-year-old righty. He's got starter stamina. He's got 9.79 ratings, which look like kind of strong number 3, weak number 2 stuff. His first pitch is a cutter, which is very well rated. It's a 9 cutter, and that's going to help him. He won't have a problem with batters from the other side of the plate. He's got a terrific slider. It's at least a 10. It may be a little better than a 10 because he actually has a positive split against righties, a pretty impressive one. And then he's got a stuck change. He's 22 and he's got a 1 out of 6 change, which is the reason probably Vegas is thinking, I don't mind giving up on this guy. Because you don't know what that changeup is. At worst, Velasco's a closer. And he's a very good one. If he can figure out anything with that change, he's a pretty darn good starter.
Right, yeah, that's the only reason I see Steven doing this trade. But he just seems to love to collect guys with 1 changeups that could be monster starting pitchers if they ever develop. I don't know how many guys can be Jimmy Greenwood and be an effective pitcher with a 3 changeup as your number 3 pitch. I just don't think Velasco. He's got a long way to go with the changeup at 22.
Right.
He's a lot further along than Greenwood was when he picked him up, and he still only has the 1 changeup. So you almost have to kind of look at him if you're Long Beach as he's going to be your closer, and if he does happen to find the changeup at some point, then it's a bonus.
Right.
But you almost have to go into the trade saying he's going to be a closer and kind of go approach the deal in that way.
That's a good way of looking at it. I think you're right. And again, I think this is a fair deal. There's a little bit of, you could argue that Long Beach got a little bit less than they should then if they got kind of a good middle reliever and a very good closer prospect. And then I just don't have a lot of value that I assigned to Valentin because, again, I don't know how the hell I don't know where he plays for a top-end starter in Gary Estes. On the other hand, Estes has like a little bit of a scary contract. So I think in the end that makes it a pretty fair deal. I think they both got kind of in that B+, A-, probably A-, honestly, talent range for both of them. Organizationally, I think this is a little better for Long Beach based sheerly on what they got. They got cheaper players. They got out of a scarier deal. They thought they didn't need Estes. Vegas, as we now know, although they thought beforehand they didn't need relief pitching, needs relief pitching. So maybe that's a little bit of my problem with hindsight and not being able to ignore that. And I have a hard time giving much more than a B+ when you take on, even though it is Coop Estes, who I love too. I'd love to have the guy. But you take on a contract like that and you give up a couple young guys that you could actually use.
Yeah, it's not a trade that in my time in the league I've seen Rec do very often, where he's trading for a veteran player and giving up a handful of interesting prospects. None of the guys, when you look at them on the surface, are like, oh my gosh, that's the guy that you've got to have for, Gary Estes. I don't want to give that guy up for Estes. You can see him wanting, being okay giving them up.
Right.
But it still just doesn't seem like a trade that he usually makes. So obviously there's a little bit of being, kind of wanting to have him back, being, disappointed that he lost him in free agency and having that opportunity to grab him, maybe giving up something that he doesn't normally. Not that it's a bad trade at all. I still think it's a good trade for him. As long as Estes holds up, because right now you're looking at paying a 37-year-old Estes $18 million. So, right. And that's guaranteed.
Right.
So that's kind of the big question mark. But for 2029 and 2030, I think it's a very good deal for Vegas for sure. And Long Beach, again, going into the season, it looked like you said, they didn't really need Estes. They weren't sure how much they were going to be contending. So you kind of trade away the guy that has a little bit of a scary contract for a team that has just dug themselves out of a huge financial hole. So I think it really ended up being just a great trade on both ends of it.
And the interesting thing about this, too, is this trade was pre-realignment. So they thought, Long Beach thought they were giving a pitcher back to a team they were directly contending with, which makes it a little bit more squirrely. There's wheels within wheels there that I don't even know that I want to get into, especially now that it doesn't even matter. So
yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's quite a bit too. And really, you think about Recta's giving up prospects that he might have to potentially play too.
Right. But I can totally see paying a little bit more for a guy you got that you love. Should you do that? Absolutely not. But it's hard to not be human. The guy I'm looking with that is a player that I didn't sign out of free. I didn't sign out of free agency in Mark Stewart because I didn't have the money, and I thought $10 million was too much for him, which I was completely wrong about. Who is now going to be a free agent again, and I might go after him to get my old batter back. Although I'm sure he'll want a 5 or 6 year deal that'll take him through age 38, and I'll have to tell him to F right off. But
yeah, I know. I mean, my team was so bad when I took over. I don't have that guy really yet. I guess the closest thing to it is paying $4 million for Jose Aquino, who is really just an okay first base backup. I mean,
right.
I really shouldn't have paid that money for him, but the guy just continues to put up solid seasons as a platoon guy.
Yeah. Well, I guess we've gotten through a little more than I thought we would, so that's kind of nice. But we're a little over an hour now. Probably should wrap this up. So thanks everybody who's still listening. There'll be, timestamps like always. I'm still looking for a co-host for the weekend edition, which I'll do by myself if I have to, but it's way more fun when there's someone here to talk about these. And thanks as always to Tyler for showing up and talking about a lot of his trades. And I think we got some good insight into kind of why we make these moves. And, having someone around who evaluates things a little bit differently even change some of the grades I had on ones that we just did today. So it is, the more people thinking about this, you can add a little bit more to it and have more fun. But thanks for coming, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ted. I always have fun doing these. As long as my wife lets me take the time to do it, I'll be happy to jump on whenever I can and BS with you.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for this one. So I guess we're signing off now. Like I said, I never know how to end these. Okay, we're done. Later.